Assalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, dear viewers, to an exclusive program, The Pool of Ideas. I'm your host for the program, Junaid Dar. Dear viewers, as the name suggests, we are discussing ideas, ideologies, theories from across the world. It's important for us to understand these ideologies in order for us to understand how the world got to where it is today, in order for us to understand how people come with their ideas or perceptions or insights into what is going on around the world, and even more, it is important for us to understand how we can grow as a community inside of this complicated world. One of the unique features of this program is the fact that we will not just talk about ideologies, but we will actually look at them from an Islamic perspective as well. And in today's program, we're going to be having a look at an insight into different ideologies that have been discussed on this fantastic program, and look at some of the reasons to why and what are the reasons behind us discussing particular ideologies. But before we do that, let me introduce to you our guest, and then we'll go straight into our questions. If I can begin by introducing Dr. Mahmoud Khalifa, I would like to welcome you to the program.
Thank you very much indeed for having me on that interesting program where we discuss the various ideologies.
Okay.
And wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah for.
Thank you very much. Dr. Mahmoud, I want to just begin by looking at the overview of the discussion. We've discussed so many different topics, from Islamism, from Islamic revival to fascism, terrorism, democracy. What inspired you to choose all these different subjects?
The idea came from the fact that we as Muslims live in a modern world where those are the current ideas or current vocabularies and philosophies that are current in the media discourse and political and social and religious discourse in the world. We needed really to introduce them in order for people to understand what those terms and philosophies meant. And I wanted to introduce that in a very basic manner, so people do not get bored, because if we discussed them in minute details. So basically, it's an attempt to expand the cultural world of the Muslim da'wah and the Muslims.
Okay, Doctor, going through with you on this journey of looking at ideologies, I must say that they're not just basic, but they were actually very comprehensive. We got like the main ideas from each ideology, but in a very comprehensive way. So, I mean, you managed to portray the idea in a very holistic manner.
Yeah, that's why the word basic, which I have just used, doesn't mean that we're being superficial, but in terms of academia, in an academic discourse, that would look basic.
Okay.
But it's not superficial.
Sure. And also, Doctor, one of my favorite topics that you took from amongst our programs was that of Islamism. Can I ask in particularly why you chose Islamism, and give us an insight into this ideology?
We chose it, I guess it was you who suggested that particular term, just for the record. Okay. Islamism, because it's a political term that is so much abused. And it would seem from the word Islamism that it's a negative thing. And actually in the West it is used as a synonym of political Islam, where political Islam is thought of as a bad idea, as involving religion in politics. But in reality, involving religion in politics is not about involvement. It's normal for a Muslim to think in a political and economic and social manner. So Islam is as a way of life. It treats the many aspects of life: its political side, its economic and social and philosophical side. So basically, while in the West religion was pushed to the background, and the West was completely secularized, and so they see any interference of religion in the public sphere, in politics and
Sure.
State affairs as a bad idea.
Sure.
But this goes back to Christianity, to a specific Western history and tradition where religion was had very negative consequences on the public order and public situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doctor, I'd also like to commend you for talking about such sensitive topics. What advice would you give to our scholars or our thinkers that are in positions of influence who, when it comes to issues of talking about Islam on a political level, they will shy away or they will move away from such topics? What's the importance of us talking about it in the public sphere?
Because they are very sensitive and important issues that will meet any Muslim on even a daily basis. Listening to the news or watching the news, you will find that most of those terms are here and there. So, and instead of just submitting to the definitions of those terms by Westerners, we wanted, or I wanted to see them in to shed some Islamic light on those ideologies in order to see how far they can possibly be seen from an Islamic point of view. Because basically in modern political science, in sociology and anthropology, all sciences are the results, all those sciences, the result of Western academia, not the Muslim world. I've seen that this is very limiting because the Islamic point of view is totally not considered.
Okay.
Because basically those who write books, textbooks on Marxism or let us say Islamism or whatever, usually they're non-Muslims and they're treating them from a Eurocentric point of view.
Okay.
So as Muslims we should produce some kind of knowledge which relate those terms to our traditions in terms of comparison, in terms of what is close, what is not close to our tradition.
Sure. Also, Doctor, in this day and age, we see the rise of Islamophobia on different levels and from different countries, and so much so that if you walk into a bookshop, you'll find so many different books talking about Islam from a negative perspective. So how important is it that we don't just discuss these terminologies, be they sensitive, but we also go out in the public world, write about it, speak about it, and have presentations on it?
I have one little story regarding that. I was reading a paper in Amsterdam University, and I went to some bookshop, and I found a pamphlet that attacks Islam as a violent jihadi religion, and there was no single book that would have made a good read for any person who is interested in Islam. So the problem is we don't really have good access to Western audiences, normal people who would like to know about Islam without the skewed or slanted point of view of Orientalism or anti-Muslim groups, far-right groups that would always want to portray Islam as violent and evil.
Okay.
So I was really shocked to see, and I felt, of course, the strong need to write books that are academic, that address Western audiences, and that are capable of making it to bookshops in Amsterdam, bookshops in London, bookshops in the United States, where people can have access to at least one different point of view about or take about Islam from a Muslim, a normal Muslim point of view.
Okay.
Because Islam is the problematic with Islam is that Western academia is giving a specific take on Islam, and they're saying that this is like the academic, the right, correct view of Islam, when it is just one point of view regarding Islam.
Sure, excellent. So you're encouraging the viewers to really start reading, start writing, and start presenting the works in an academic way so that we can influence Western audiences as well.
Of course. This is part of the Muslim da'wah, to make Islam known to non-Muslims, people who might have strong interest in getting to Islam beyond the stereotypes of Hollywood, of the violent Muslims, and beyond the political discourse of Western media, which singles out Islam for criticism, attaching to it negative ideas, because a few people here and there did an act of violence against non-Muslims. So
Okay. Doctor, also now we looked at Islamism, but another subject or ideology that we talked about, I think this one you chose, is fascism. And it's a very interesting ideology, especially now with the rise of American Donald Trump, and also some of the rise even in the UK, the right-wing politics. What were the driving forces that encouraged you to talk about fascism?
Basically, because it's an important term, and because fascism is on the rise, especially, and the consequences are very bad, especially for minorities and immigrants. And Muslims are under a lot of pressure from that fascism.
Okay.
We have seen laws enacted in France to prevent Muslim women from wearing a burkini, covering their bodies. And they are fined for doing so. We have attacks, killing Muslims by a neighbor,
okay.
Muslims and Christians as well, who are from an Arab origin. So basically, fascism is on the rise as the result of the fear and propaganda of people like Donald Trump, who wants to trump up support for himself at the expense of Muslims and immigrants.
Sure.
So fascism is the outcome of fear and the political ambition of specific individuals like Trump, who is too narrow-minded to think about the consequences of his words about Muslims and immigrants.
Okay, and one of the actual materializations of his ideology and what is going on and the rise of fascism is the death and the killing of that imam that left the masjid and was killed in broad daylight. But on that, Doctor, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll continue talking about the reasons and the benefits of talking about different ideologies. Dear viewers, let's take a short break here on the program, The Pool of Ideas, and then when we come back, we'll have a look at some of the other reasons and the benefits to why certain ideologies have been discussed. Let's take a break, and I'll see you in just a few moments.
Open your eyes to the world of today. Open your eyes to the world of today.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back, dear viewers, joining us on our fantastic program, The Pool of Ideas. And we're just having an insight into some of the ideologies that we have discussed so far. Let's turn back to our guest and go into further reasons to why we've selected certain ideologies. Doctor, we talked previously before the break on a number of different ideologies, but I want to focus now on your choice of discussion for Orientalism. Why did you pick this particular subject?
Because Orientalism has a historical monopoly on how Islam is represented in Western media, in Western academic discourse, even in Western popular discourse.
Okay, and can I ask you also about the dangers of Orientalism? Many times people will think that it's very normal for a person or non-Muslim to study Islam and then write books about it or produce literature about it, but for the Muslim community, what is the danger of Orientalism?
The dangers of Orientalism is basically that it spreads stereotypical of Muslims and Islam as violent and terroristic. And if you keep talking about Muslims as violent, terroristic, you are spreading fear from Muslims and encouraging violence against Muslims themselves. And that has shown itself in recent times in the rising concept of Islamophobia and in acts of violence against Muslims, like the killing of the Imam, and last year the killing of a medical student, his wife and his sister, in North Carolina, and many other acts of violence against Muslims. In Germany, you have a hijabi sister killed right in the court when she sued a German from a Russian origin. There was a disagreement over...
They killed her inside the court?
Yeah, he killed her inside the court. So basically, by encouraging Islamophobia, you encourage violence against Muslims.
Okay.
Because Orientalism and its stereotypes of Muslims as violent, this stereotype dehumanizes Muslims. Because any normal person isn't essentially violent all the time or for no good reason.
Sure.
So Muslims are like any other communities and societies. They're just acting normal. So
Okay, and
to attach a specific stigma of violence to them is just irrational.
sure. And doctor, so what would be your response? Would you encourage a Muslim to go overseas and go study in a university which is predominantly known to be an Oriental institution?
We have two things here. First thing is that for that Muslim student has to have his particular strong basis in Islamic Sharia and in Islamic sciences from a traditional Azharite point of view. And then, of course, he can go and make use of the new methodologies and technologies used to study Islam in the West.
Sure.
And maybe he will make a very good contribution to that.
Right, okay.
And we're even very lucky to have people like Jonathan Brown, professor of Islam. He's a convert and has produced so many books that give a very balanced view of Islam. So basically, Islam is having people from everywhere. It's I think it's defended by God. So
sure.
He will make it. He will create soldiers for Islam where there are none.
That's a promise of Allah, isn't it? That He will make Islam the victorious religion no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Also, Doctor, we had a selection of topic of secularism. And I would like to ask a question here that we find many a scholar or Islamic thinkers now promoting secularism and wanting secularism in Muslim countries. And they're saying it's a stepping stone into the establishment of religion. Would you agree with that statement?
I don't think so. Secularism is by definition an anti-religion. It's first of all, it looks like a neutral term when it comes to religion, but secularism works by degrees. First of all, it says religion belongs to the private sphere of man. And then, side by side, it will allow for atheism to grow. It will allow for other competing ideologies to grow. And finally, religion will disappear even from the private sphere. So secularism, or let us say secularization, is a process, the end product of which is atheism.
Okay, but Doctor, one may argue with your premise here that Turkey, as an example, which used the secular system, managed to go from being very secular to becoming relatively religious.
I don't think so. It has become relatively secular.
Okay.
So basically, what happened was secularism was a little bit tempered, but not finished, or it remains the skeletal part of the political system.
Okay.
So Muslims are just, or Islamist parts are allowed a space to work with the same rules of the game, of the political game, and even in the attempted coup in Turkey, the attempted coup in Turkey in July is just an indication of how far it is safe for political parties from an Islamist background. How far is it dangerous for them? They're all the time being threatened by being toppled through a coup, even after the economic achievements and growth and liberties which Erdogan and his party have introduced.
Okay, so would you then agree with some people who might say that the ideal political model in our day and age is the model of Turkey, or would you say that's not?
Turkey is never an ideal model. So far, we don't have a Muslim nation which we call a good model for the applying of Sharia and Islam.
Okay, so we're still looking.
We're still looking, and countries are succeeding in one way or another. And there was an interesting study which placed Muslim countries at, the study was interested in seeing how far a country is bound by Sharia or is Islamic. And it turned out Ireland turned out to be number one.
The most religious
yeah,
Islamic
so
country.
I mean, so in terms of applying the spirit of Islam and Islam,
Okay.
it is not just about appearances and having a beard or a thobe. It's about the establishment of Muslim Islamic principles.
So, Doctor,
So
maybe
we're lacking in that.
maybe we might hear some fatwa telling us that we have to make migration to Ireland.
By the way, there is an idea that the old distinction between Dar al-Islam and Dar al-Harb is no longer valid, because in places where we have a Dar al-Islam, Muslims are prevented from praying in certain mosques or having their having a safe way of practicing religion without being monitored, spied on, sometimes arrested and tortured. So, but if you go to a certain Dar al-Harb, for example, you might just find a real Dar al-Islam in terms of how Muslims are free to practice their religion. They can just go to the court to get their rights, things which sometimes or many times in Muslim nations are not our luxuries.
Okay, so Doctor, let me ask you a question then, coming back to the interpretation of the Sharia. We understand that some of the scholars, our great scholars, have got, they say, the maqasid of the Sharia, the purposes of the Sharia. Would you say then in certain Western countries, like you mentioned Ireland, do you think they are closer to the purpose of the Sharia than many Muslim countries?
Yeah, if protection of the nafs of the person, his property, his mind, his religion, those five essential qualities which Islam stresses and protects through hudud and through, if that's the measure by which a country is judged Muslim or less Islamic, then I think many Western countries will qualify as more Islamic than countries we deem Islamic.
Okay, very interesting. Doctor, let's move forward a little bit. Another topic that we decided to pick up as well was that of Zionism. Can I ask one of the reasons to why you chose to talk about Zionism?
Because one of the modern tragedies and continuing occupation, even after many countries, most of the world is now free from occupation, with the exception of Palestine.
Okay.
So Zionism is just an ideology that is racist, that's preventing people from returning to their homelands, and that is giving the right to return to Jewish people who never belonged in Palestine, are given a right in Palestine, while people who have their ancestry, even people who keep the keys, the iron keys, old iron keys of their of the doors to their houses,
Okay.
they're incapable of returning. So Zionism has caused one of the most devastating tragedies for the world has ever seen.
Okay.
For Palestinians, Arabs and Muslims, and all people in the world who have a conscience.
Okay, very important, as you mentioned, all people have a conscience. I'd also like to talk about the issue of Palestine, which obviously consists of the capital of Jerusalem, and also talking about the Masjid al-Aqsa, the holy masjid for the Muslims.
It's the third holiest mosque in Islam.
Okay.
And it features in Surah Al-Isra. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحان الذي أسرى بعبده من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى الذي باركنا حوله. So it's a place blessed by God. So it is one of the duties of a Muslim to go there and defend it, and it remains one of the crisis points between Islam and the West. As the West continues to support Israel, it continues to destroy bridges between itself and the Islamic world.
Yeah, and so, Doctor, the issue of Palestine is not just a Palestinian issue or an Arab issue, it's actually a core fundamental Islamic issue.
Yeah, because with the third holiest mosque in Islam in Palestine, occupied by Israel, the issue, all Muslims have a stake in what is going to happen.
Okay. Doctor, unfortunately we have run out of time, and this is the very last episode as well. Do you have any reminder or a very comment that you would like to give to the viewers about this fantastic program?
I would like our viewers to, besides having knowledge, strong basis in Islamic knowledge and Sharia, in Hadith, and Fiqh. They should have good culture of other notions around them. So they can, when doing da'wah, they can understand how other people think.
Excellent.
And the best way to put across Islamic ideas to others belonging to other ideologies.
Excellent, and hopefully, Doctor, if you don't mind, if I can grab after the show a recommended reading list of these ideologies, which you can then,
of course,
we can put up for viewers to benefit from as well.
Inshallah.
Okay, Doctor, I must say myself personally, I benefited so much from your company, and I enjoyed working with you as well. And most importantly, I enjoyed looking at your beautiful smile as well.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I would sadly have to conclude the program and say thank you very much for coming to the program and giving us a fantastic series. And hopefully we can make another pool of ideas come shortly. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Conclude by saying Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much. Dear viewers, we've come to the end of our segment here on the Pool of Ideas. Not just this segment, but the series itself. What a fantastic series. What a golden opportunity for us to learn about different ideologies, from fascism to Islamism. I mean, these topics are not freely discussed. Let's be frank and let's be honest. You will not hear about these topics on the minbar. You will not hear about scholars standing up and openly talking about this. But they are fundamental to our future, fundamental to our success. We have to understand our opponents, understand our society, and then and only then can we really truly apply the fiqh, the Quran, the Sunnah, which Allah Almighty wants us to apply in the correct manner. So I would like to thank all of you for tuning in, and I would like to give a special thanks to the doctor as well for his efforts, and I would like to conclude by saying Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi